Is it possible to replicate real locomotive sounds on our railways? Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie, and in the last video I put the feelers out for information regarding horns post the steam era, the horns, that whether they're high tone, low tone, D-dar, dar-D and all this sort of thing, and do they have a defined meaning? Lovely. Now, I had some very interesting responses, and from current and ex-British Rail drivers. I'll mention a couple in particular. That's Rob H, Scott S and Michael S. I'm sure you know who you are, guys. I'm a modern day train driver and whistle tones are pretty straightforward nowadays when not including shunting tones. They have been standard for years. To warn someone who is on or near the line, it's a high then a low tone, the length of each at the driver's discretion. Now, I live near Castle Carey down in deepest darkest Somerset, and it has 3 platforms, but platforms 1 and 2 are the up and the down line, and trains do come hammering through on those lines when they're obviously not stopping at Castle Carey. So let's take a little look at a couple of videos of trains whipping through that station.
Stand back from the edge of platform 2. The next train is not scheduled to stop.
As I'm sure you noticed, that 66 didn't have a tail light. Ooh. Now, that clip of Bittern coming through Carey I think is quite interesting. I'm going to play it again just so you can listen again to the sounds of the train coming across the wooden sleeper track and then going into the welded track.
Back from the edge of platform 1. The next train is not scheduled to stop.
Well, as you can tell from those clips, both Bittern and Tornado just sort of went for it on the whistle as they hammered through the station. And Tornado, I mean, it was lovely. It was obviously it was dark, and the smoke and the smog and the smell of the coal dust was really quite emotional. And talking of emotional, when 1015 Western Centurion went through, it was the last time that I'd seen a Western on the track since late 1975, just before I ran away and joined the Navy in February 76. And I found it very emotional to see that train hammering through. Beautiful. Right, moving on back on to our guidance. When passing a whistle board, it's just a low tone. Now, I'll go on to this because there's as I say, the D-dar, the high tone and the low tone, but also trains nowadays have two volumes, I believe. So you have a quiet high tone and a quiet low tone, or a loud high and low. But why the difference between high and low? Well, the physics of it is that high tones will travel further than low tones. So if there's no real need for a great deal of volume, I imagine they're switching to a low tone. Wrong direction movement, there's a series of short blasts. No longer whistles when entering tunnels or leaving stations. Bell buzzers obviously do for stations. But again, in my era, when you go into a tunnel, it's a low tone. When you emerge from a tunnel, it's a low tone. And I'm sure your steam era guys will blow whistles. It's mainly down to being kind to the railway neighbours. No longer sound a whistle when passing a signal at danger. They would have in my era to alert the guard, mainly in case of other regulation requirements. Enter or leaving a depot shed, a short blast on the soft setting, or a diesel whistle unless authorised. Whistles are not to be used between midnight and 0600 unless it's necessary. There are lots more of whistle codes for shunting. Thank you guys for the information. It is absolutely wonderful. So now I'm going to do a short couple of clips of when I visited the South Devon Railway and got a cab ride in a Class 25.
So this is just a warning telling me that in a minute we're going to be on a 5 mile an hour speed restriction.
Right.
Coming up now to a permanent 5 mile an hour over the level crossing because it's an ungated crossing.
Roger.
So anyone can go over at the last minute, so you have to have your wits about you.
It's clear down the lane.
Clear down the lane. The yellow signal you can see in front is a distance signal.
Still there,
Still clear.
So thank you. Hi Jeff. Hello. No. Right board.
Right board. I hope you caught that token right with the gaffer on there.
Oh yeah.
Nick,
Hello, right Nick.
What was that then? Ride the board.
sorry?
When you said ride the board?
Right the board, meaning the signal is clear.
Right.
So we always repeat that back to each other when one of us notices something.
Yeah.
Common practice is to repeat that back.
To acknowledge it.
To acknowledge that you've heard what the other person said. Then there's no misunderstanding.
And my thanks to Howard and the staff of the South Devon Railway for a fascinating day out. It really is worth a visit if you're in the area. Right. One other instance about horns is that if there's a passenger train alongside stopped in the platform and there's let's say a fast up or a fast down which running parallel to it, then the train would sound its horn to warn the passengers in the train that's parked up not to go leaning out of the window. Now, clearly, as a naive child, when I hear the horn, I'd sort of pull the window down of the Mark 1 coach and lean out to see what the fuss is about. But it's to warn the passengers, obviously, not to lean out the window because this express train is come hurtling through. And that's something that I'm trying to incorporate into Chadwick. If there's a train in platform 1, a passenger train on platform 1 or platform 2, and then there's a fast train coming by, then the fast train would sound its horn prior to coming alongside. Marvellous. So that's all the gist of it. Now switching back to diesels and diesels alone, so we have a high tone and a low tone, a D and a DAR. We have the two together, a D-DAR. There's a DAR-D, as you heard on the Class 66. And now we want to incorporate those into our trains, because that's all it's about, is trying to replicate some kind of realism into plastic trains. Hopeful, aren't we, really? But let's take a look now at the Accurascale Class 31. It's a new one, it's straight off the block. It has a D and a DAR and a D-DAR. So this is the sound of the D. This is the DAR. And this is the D-DAR. But what can we now do with these sounds that are on our sort of high-end locomotives? Well, let's switch away from the Accurascale 31 and I'll show you what I've done with my DMU. Now here is my trusty old Bachmann 108 two-car DMU. It's as old as the hills, really, but inside it now there's a Locksound version 5 decoder with a Trainomatic Stay Alive and a sound profile from Richard at Road and Rails from Wheel Tapper's DCC Sounds. In the trailer car there's also a decoder. It's a Lock Pilot version 5, therefore I can faff around with the lights, and as you can see there are red lights on the power car, but there are also red lights on the trailer car because it's in a station, so I can turn on the sort of depot lights, as it were. So let's try our sequence of sounds. So the first thing the driver is going to do is naturally start her up. And of course this DMU has two engines. And once the driver has everything stabilised, of course, he can turn off those depot lights. Now let's assume that all our passengers are safely embarked and we're ready to go. So as you'd expect, the signals will change. Cleared to go, the guard then blows his whistle. Jumping on the train, closed up, he then buzzes the driver. And the driver buzzes back. Next thing, of course, is... and we're ready to go. So now with all those functions programmed into Train Controller, we just need to press a button. It's only when you watch the footage back that you realise that the speed of that DMU is actually a little bit too quick. I imagine a 5 mile an hour reduction on the whole route from the main station up to the branch line station is probably for the best. Right, okay, let's get some bigger trains out and see what we can do with those functions. So, what's the cunning plan? Well, it's all about crossing fingers now. So I'm going to send up the warship with the passenger train. It will go up Helix One. When it gets to the second level, it should trigger the HST. Yeah, I know they're kind of eras apart. Anyway, so the HST will then make its way to Helix One. And then as the warship comes off the top of Helix One, the HST will be on the bottom. The warship makes its way up here now into platform 1 and will stop around here. Meanwhile, the HST comes off the Helix, blows its horn, turns sounds on, all this kind of blah, comes straight through. As it reaches the corner at the top, it should sound its horn to warn the passengers in this train not to lean out the windows, as I mentioned earlier. Now, for some reason, it blows its horn here as well, and I can't seem to stop that. Anyway, it will depart. Then, hopefully, fingers crossed, after a period of time to let the HST get away, the timer will run out on this track, and then the guard's whistle will sound, the horn will sound, and this warship will then depart off down Helix 2 following the HST. All sounds good. Now, I do know one issue. I've got a wheel issue on one of the coaches on the warship train, and for some reason one axle pops off, so I need to stop it on the Helix. I'll show you when I do that, and to pop it back on, I think what it actually needs is some magnetic hunt couplings between those two coaches, because I think they're different manufacturers. Right, that's the cunning plan. Let's see what happens in reality. So now the first thing we do is we trigger the warship passenger train. And she heads off towards Helix One. She comes onto the Helix. And then she triggers the HST. The warship then comes off the Helix and makes her way across the viaduct and hopefully into platform 1. Meanwhile, the HST approaches the top of the helix, switches on sound, and then heads up across the viaduct. She turns the corner and should sound her horn. There she goes. Down past the warship. Sounds it again for some reason which I am not aware of. And then she disappears down onto Helix Two. Meanwhile, the clock's now ticking on our warship. And sadly, no whistle or horn. Back to the drawing board with that one then, Charlie. Do you know, I just think I heard that horn. The HST has almost completed her travels, and I mentioned that on this helix here a wheel is thrown, and with the old short circuit coin oh, blow me down, this time it hasn't done it. So she then heads back into her storage yard alongside the HST. Now, editing that last sequence together, there was actually 3 complete runs of those trains to sort of make it sort of flow with different camera angles and to make it a little bit more interesting, because obviously I can't operate all the cameras at once to shoot a segment and so on. But what I did notice during the edit was that when the HST came around the far corner to blow its horn, and inadvertently, I don't know why, but it blows its horn here, there was also a beep from the computer. So I've got the HST sat just over behind that camera. I'm just going to drag and drop it onto the helix and see if it runs through here. If we get obviously the horn of the HST sounding to warn the passengers, but I also see if I get a beep from this computer. So if I drag and drop the HST from there to the helix down, hopefully it'll zoom into life, which it has. It's coming across the viaduct. It'll come around the bend, and will it? No, will it? Ah. Now, hopefully you heard that. It blew its horn, went beep, and then there's a ding on the computer, so there must be some kind of a warning which doesn't show up on these screens. So that's going to take a little more research. If you want to know what happened to the noise, then I just hit a kill switch in train control and it just takes track power away. But hopefully you kind of find these bits interesting, if not, as I do, intriguing, let's say. But please, just because I have train controller and someone else has got iTrain and we have these automated programs, please don't think this is necessarily the avenue for you. This is a very technical kind of aspect of model railways, and it doesn't come cheap. The other thing is, it's addictive, and I find myself coming down here as I did a couple of nights ago at 3:30 in the morning because something was keeping me awake. I thought, no, I know what it is, and I couldn't get back to sleep. So I got out of bed, came down here, had a mooch around, didn't fix it as a matter of, you know, that's just the way it is. Sorry, I've got a bit of a throat here. Didn't fix it, but these are the things that kind of eat away at you. This is a very, very addictive hobby if you're getting into sort of medium scale automation. Don't feel sorry for me, it's a self-inflicted injury. Now I thought I'd just finish up with a quick overview of my thoughts about the Parkway station. If you're not into Parkway stations, they're a kind of 1960s, 1970s build that was done on the cheap. I can't sort of dress it up. I mean, you know, you're going to segregate the car parking area from the platform, not with a nice wall, but with a steel sort of spar fence along it because it's cheaper and it's easier to do. You know, these cheapy buildings will go in, no real expense spared on the development of this station. So what are we going to do? What are we looking at? Well, in this area here, I thought of well, it wasn't my idea, someone else mentioned this, that you could use this more of a country lane farmyard track. And then here you'd have a loop of track coming in, loop of the road coming up here and then swing back out. And then your traffic would go to and from the parking area. It's kind of very embryonic. I've got a piece of paper that I lay out and draw lines on and everything else, but it seems to hold water. I've even worked out the turning distance of a Panorama Elite. Notice these are Chadwick coaches, and I'm very grateful to the gentleman who provided them. So what would happen then? Yep, so you get your coach coming in and parking up, your cars would flow in past the station, then up into this Chadwick parking area, and similarly they'd flow back the other way. And then meanwhile, of course, we need to do something here, so we're going to cut this down to give it a little bit of a drop, and in this area here we're going to put some sort of permanent way fixture for the maintenance of the railway in general, you know, away from the town centre. Now I've also thought about parcels area, so Red Star was the sort of spirit of the day, so we can co-locate these two buildings here, and then obviously my DPU can come up and do its stuff, and that would be a collection and deposit area for people bringing their parcels to go up the line, as it were. So there's the sort of road. It sort of comes in, comes around, then to and from the Parkway area, and of course Parkway is all about car parking out of town, so it's going to be a mass of cars, but I'm sure we'll sort of develop this, and hopefully I'll bring you up to date on the next instalment. Well, I hope you found the footage of real trains interesting, and the aspects of horns, and of course how we can bring that aspect into our own model railways. It's an interesting avenue, and it does bring an added sort of air of realism. Next time we're going to go to town on the station and get the layout of the station done properly, so we can figure out exactly how it would work, and turning circles of buses and all that sort of stuff. So it should be quite interesting. And in the meantime, there's the old subscriber button. If you're not a subscriber, please hit it. Subscribing is free, and if not, perhaps even a thumbs up. If you want to become a patron, then there's the button for that. Patrons get these things a day earlier than everyone else, and of course they're adverts free. Only cost between £1 and £5 a month, and I do value your support. Anyway, in the meantime, there's a video here and here, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. That's all. Take care. Bye-bye.